So each morning when we wake up, we generate three motivations: not to harm, to benefit beings, and then to become fully awakened. And then the day starts. And there's usually at least one or a number of moments in the day that are a complete mismatch with that. And as Jazz said yesterday in our go around to start this retreat, that we sometimes go back to these base instinctual survival, these base survival instincts, I think was his word. And I took that to mean that instead of that, what we're not doing in that moment is living with the integrity that we have, living up to our own values. And so a while back, I reacted to a few moments of unpredictability. And as I see that now, really these were moments of lack of integrity on my part. And I was talking with Venerable Chodron about this. Usually when that happens, if I actually speak, when I have the state of mind that I had, then I usually confess it, which is helpful for me. But my response to those moments was, I really need to be on guard. So I was telling her that I need to be on guard. And she said, no, you need more diligence. And so in that moment, I realized that one, my response was very fear-based, and that I was actually giving away my power because I was expecting something around me to change rather than kind of taking control of my mind, wanting somebody else to change or something. So as I thought about this, I was thinking, even if when we study nonviolent communication, even there, we don't ever have a motivation to change someone else or for anyone else to meet, and any other particular person to meet our needs. And so in that moment, what I was doing was I was in my mind expecting this other person to change to meet my need for predictability, all ducks lined up in order. That's what my experience was. So as I thought about this later, I thought, that isn't even, my reaction isn't even in line, it's not in line with my sense of values, my own integrity, my Dharma practice, or with what is the motivation for any of the communication that we do in nonviolent communication, which is one of compassion. And so, I'm just not making it on any front there. And so to have a response of needing to be on guard, that's not going to work. And it's also a pretty bizarre way to walk around all day. So yesterday when we did the circle, and I knew I was giving this BBC, so I didn't say much because I'm going to say it today. So my aim, kind of my theme for this retreat, is to look at these areas where my ethical conduct isn't what I want it to be. And then look at these four kind of errors that happen, that why we have ethical errors. One is not knowing. You might not know what's to be adopted and what's to be abandoned. Or you might not have respect for, you just might not respect certain kinds of conduct that are considered ethical. Or you might be careless. And that could be you're ignoring your sila, your ethical conduct, or you could not care if what you're doing in that moment. Really, if I look at my mind in that moment, do I care if I'm ethical? When I just, no, in that moment, I'm not having integrity. And I'm not caring about virtue. So I only realized this today, that, these are instances of carelessness. And also what's going on in that moment is you're not caring about the effects of your actions on others, which is a lack of consideration for others. So what happens instead is we just follow the impulse that comes to our mind, like what you were saying, basic survival instincts, or whatever. That's one way to think of it. I just think of it as impulsive thoughts. So the antidote to this carelessness is to be careful and conscientious in our actions. We want to try to be mindful of our ethical conduct, our precepts, clearly know what our body, speech, and mind are doing, so that we can modify our mental, verbal, and physical behavior. And so this is really what I took from what Venerable Children said to me, I realized. And then just before I go on, the fourth thing of these four is when you have strong afflictions in your mind. That's also another cause of lacking ethical conduct at a particular moment. And so these kind of happenings, these kind of behaviors that we have, we can actually shut the doors to those by developing our mindfulness, by developing our introspection, our integrity, and our consideration for others. But then what about diligence? What was that about? And so I found a verse that spoke about diligence. I was talking with Venerable Uin about Buddhadasa. And I'm going to read this verse that he quoted and put it in the female form, not a male form for the pronouns and whatever. And he said, "The wise woman, standing firm on the ground, takes up the edged weapon in her hands, sharpens it on the stone, and working diligently succeeds in clearing away the thick jungle. The wise woman, standing firm on the ground, takes up the edged weapon in her hands, sharpens it on the stone, and working diligently succeeds in clearing away the thick jungle." So then he unpacks this. The wise person is someone born with insight, which we nowadays would call intelligence. And what he's saying is that we have an immature form of insight that we can develop into a genuine insight. So that's the wise woman or wise man. And then, although a meditator may have intelligence, they need their feet to stand firm on the ground, and that's our sila, our ethical conduct. And then the edged weapon is like worldly wisdom. And these are the various kinds of understanding that we gain from study, even things about how that relate to mental development. So all our Lamrim studies and all of that. That's an edged weapon, but it's a worldly wisdom, because we need the process of sharpening this mundane wisdom into a super-mundane wisdom that's penetrating and can put an end to the causes of our suffering, which he describes in their system more as fetters and inherent tendencies. We might think of more as afflictions and such. And then the hands are what he called operative insight. This is a kind of insight that helps a person who's wandering in samsara to know what they need to do. He says it's a natural insight that's developed so one realizes what needs to be done. And I think of it, what he said is like, from practicing, we start to have a kind of the wisdom that knows about the effects of karma, like knows what to adopt and what to abandon. That's the way I took that. So that's what he called the operative insight, or it's the hands in this verse. And then the stone is concentration. And concentration is the basis for wisdom and insight. And whether we have some naturally or we have to consciously develop it, it's this stone that the weapon is sharpened upon. So then diligence comes in, and this is what drew me to this verse. But also you can see that the verse has the trainings of ethics, concentration, and wisdom in it, which is kind of like our practice. But diligent here, he describes as a willingness and earnestness in what one does, a determination that's taking the practice seriously, a keen interest in the practice, so devoted from beginning to end without any deviation. So you're like, diligence is also often translated as effort. But here he's really bringing out some different points. And another thing he says is it has a spirit of inquiry accompanied by clear comprehension, which is the introspective awareness, or sampajana, to solve intelligently and in time any problem that may arise in the course of the practice. So I think of these as the things to hold on to as we enter into retreat. This willingness in our practice, kind of like our aspiration for our practice. And this determination to take what we're doing seriously, put energy into it, and then a keen interest in what we're doing. From beginning to end, be devoted. It's kind of like having a kind of faith that won't let you deviate. And then the spirit of inquiry reminds me of something Venerable used to say that really attracted me to her teachings. And it was an expression she used in the first year or so that I met her, where she would say, explore the possibility. And I always find that attitude to be helpful when I'm swimming upstream against my wrong views or my behaviors or my habitual afflictions and tendencies and all that. So, and things that I just don't understand, that don't make sense to me. Then I have to pull out this, explore the possibility, have this spirit of inquiry, try to make your mind more open, but it can't just be an open mind, it has to have some sense of introspective awareness, probing into things with an intelligence and a way that knows that over time you'll keep going until you work it out. And then the last thing in here is the thick jungle. And this is the tangle of our mental defilements, or what we would call afflictions. These pierce and prick, just as the thorny undergrowth of a thick jungle. So to succeed in clearing away this thick jungle, you have to clear away all the cluttering undergrowth of defilements as one would clear away clumps of thorny bamboo, thick, inextricably interwoven. I think that really describes her afflictions. Thick, inextricably interwoven. It's kind of a mess sometimes. So then just to read the verse again, and then you can see what all this is saying. The wise woman, standing firm on the ground, takes up the edged weapon in her hands, sharpens it on the stone, and working diligently succeeds in clearing away the thick jungle. So that's what our opportunity is as we enter retreat.